wondering how I got into this mix.
Hey, what's up everyone? This is Derrick with The Conscious Resistance. I'm here in Costa Rica at Envision Festival 2020 with a good friend of mine, Mr. Rob Greenfield. And for those who have followed this channel for a while, me and Rob have done, we were trying to figure it out. There's 2 or 3 interviews, and then we've done some work together. The last time we were in person, which is 4 years ago, pretty crazy, at Standing Rock, where we did live streams. Rob was there. And I'll put all those links up for people who want to hear about your foraging. We've talked about Dude Making a Difference. We've kind of covered a lot of your work over the years, and I'll put all those links below for those who want to catch up. But today, we've had a couple of days now to see where we're both at.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's been standing out in my mind that I feel like we could have some interesting discussion on is the issue of travel, right? So we were just kind of talking at lunch that you have a world tour coming up. Tell everybody about that first before we go.
Sure. Yeah, for the next year I'll be traveling. It's called the World Solutions Tour. So the idea is to focus on solutions. You know, both you and I, we know there's a lot of problems in the world. Everybody watching this knows there's a lot of problems. You know, my focus is the solutions, what we can do. And so the whole tour is focused on solutions. I'll be speaking in about 30 countries, Europe, India, East Asia, Southeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand. And basically, you know, plugging into the local communities, telling people about what they can do to get involved. And then also at the same time, I'll be telling the stories of local activists, people, communities who are part of the solution to the problems we have in the world today. And so that's the next year.
Where can people find out more about that if they want to see where you're coming?
Just robgreenfield.org/World Solutions Tour.
Okay, cool. So in line with that thinking, if I remember correctly, and then we may have talked about this years ago, at one point you weren't flying though, right? You were kind of like, I'm going to reduce, obviously it's still a part of your work, reducing the impact, and this is definitely something that is always on my mind, as the last 4 years have been traveling more than I ever have in my life, for reasons that I tell myself are for the greater good or to spread an idea. And I just wanted to kind of go back and forth on that because, again, I know you maybe had previous feelings, and just where are you at now? Like, what are your thoughts on those of us who are thinking of how do we reduce our impact, become less wasteful, versus the ability to reach more people?
Yeah, this is a good thing to talk about. I'm glad we're talking about this. It is a poignant place to be talking about this because you didn't fly here, did you?
Well, I flew from Houston to New Mexico.
Okay.
I definitely used some planes to get here.
So I flew, and I did go 2 years without flying, which in my adult life is the longest that I've ever gone, and then to get here was my first flight in 2 years.
Okay.
So basically, we have 2 different ways of looking at things. One, some environmentalists would believe in reducing our impact as much as possible. And one way to do that is by not traveling. So one way of looking at it is stepping outside of the system as much as we possibly can with our food, with the way we create our energy, with our transportation, how we get around, and creating local communities. And then the other part of it, so the extreme end of that would be basically living in a cabin that you built by yourself, like in the woods or on the prairie, growing and foraging all of your food, and basically opting out of the system completely. Then the other end of that is what's called transitional ethics, which is the system exists. And for all those of us who want to change the system, stepping out of it completely doesn't actually allow us the greatest ability to change the system. So what I do is I look at every scenario and I combine the two. How far can I remove myself from the system to reduce the number of ways that I'm contributing to injustice and inequality, and then at the same time stay within the system enough to affect it? And that comes to flying. So for me, the way that I deal with flying is if I truly believe that the impact that I make will be greater than the flying, then to me it is a no-brainer, because we live in 2020. If we do nothing, we'll get what we always got. If we go live in the woods, that is powerful and that is meaningful, and I respect that greatly, but I think we need to disrupt the system partly from within. So, transitional ethics require constant critical thinking and looking at every situation with a fresh set of eyes.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because it's not. I mean, I definitely, and I've talked about this. I know you have as well, and I always use you as an example of the importance of having a set of principles and living by them and striving to live by them, because lots of folks don't even know what that means, and so they're all over the place with their actions. They're very inconsistent. But I also do think that there is a delicate balance between becoming dogmatic as well, and then whereas you said, well, maybe you're sticking to your principles, but by doing that, you've rendered yourself ineffective, and you can't even affect the world anymore. You can't meet new people. You can't spread the ideas and the things you care about. And so this is something also that I've thought about, not only with flying, but with something that is also very intrinsic to both of our lives, and that is using phones and computers. And because I've tried to put this situation in my head, this scenario where I'm like, okay, well, I know that lithium needs to be ripped out of the earth for this computer battery to operate, for me to do all these good things and that I see as valuable, and we're reaching people, we get inspirational emails, thank you for your work and this sort of thing. And then I wonder, like, how would I feel? Would I still be able to stand as strong in that as if I'm looking at somebody and speaking to somebody from an indigenous community or a different part of the world where their community has lithium leaching into the soil or the water, and they're like, your computer built this. Like, just the realities of that, like you said, like there's steps we can take, and the other side of it is that our actions do have an extractive effect on the earth. And again, I don't know what the perfect answer is, but I hope that we, by having these conversations, and I've talked about this with Stephen Brooks as well, like that we can bring this dialogue forward and encourage more people, as you said, to revisit. It's not just about being dogmatic, but you have those, I like that the way you put that transitional ethics, and I think it allows for coming back. Like, okay, well, looking at everything individually, like this trip might be different. Maybe this one I can't justify as much as this other one I thought I could, right? So how would you suggest people who are, I guess, wanting to go towards that, and again, they're like, well, Rob, I fly all the time for work, right? Well, what can I do to reduce my impact if I can't necessarily stop flying at the moment, or if that's not realistic for me?
Yeah, and I agree with the computer thing, Our technological system is one of the greatest forms of injustice and destruction that there is to the earth, to other species, and to humanity. And so part of me wants to opt out of using computers and all of that completely. But again, it comes down to what is the goal? Is the goal just to work on yourself, or is the goal to work on the bigger picture? And, for example, this year with my travels, 100% of the speaking fees are being donated to Indigenous and women-led nonprofits, and I'll probably raise $20,000, $30,000 or something. I truly believe that $20,000 or $30,000 that goes directly into their hands will create more empowerment and more regeneration for those communities than if I didn't do it. Sure. So for flying, like one example of something that I've personally committed to, I actually will say that I don't feel bad about flying. And it actually doesn't go against my principles, because the principles are, how can you use your life to be of best service? So one thing, for example, with flying that other people can do would be carbon offsets. However, gigantic asterisk to that. Not all are created equally, and I'm also not talking about carbon trading, where giant corporations can just keep spewing and then they just get to buy via trading. So the carbon offsets that I use are through the gold standard, which is the highest standard of offsets, and they're third-party verified. And the ones that I do sequester carbon, but at the same time increase quality of life. So the ones that I'm doing for this year actually are building clean water for people in Honduras and preventing trees from being cut down. They would normally have to cut down trees to make charcoal to boil their water, and instead giving them clean water systems means keeping forests and giving them clean water. So the point is that even if we aren't able to turn things around as humanity, which I don't think we will on a personal level, so climate change, basically my focus isn't on climate change, because I think we're already in runaway climate change, and I don't think we're going to turn it around. But so if I can, my strategy is always, how can you increase quality of life now while looking at the bigger picture? So that's the idea of these. That's the same idea with planting community fruit trees, for example. Community fruit trees do sequester carbon and do play a role in the long run, but also 2 years from now, people are eating fruit that might not have otherwise had access to healthy fruit and vegetables. So for me, it's always about looking at the long term and the short term, because I mean, we don't really have 20 years to wait. You know, people need, we need to help each other now.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. So many different ways we could take the conversation. One thing I will say, as far as I kind of agree with you with climate change not being my main focus, in the sense that, well, what I've always appreciated, I know I've told you before, is that you do take a very lead by example, live by your principles approach, which is something that I've always resonated with, and I think that's what draws people to your work, is that you're not just talking down to them or telling them this or that. And, you know, sometimes people see hypocrisy with, say, a celebrity comes out and says that they're here to fight for the environment while they fly on their private jet, or, you know, something like that, right? Yeah. And so I've recently tried to put some effort and done a couple of videos talking about the concept of a decentralized environmental movement, where folks who aren't just looking for, like, the solutions you were saying, like the corporations that just want to greenwash and trade carbon credits and things of that sort, but really get people to see the solutions are planting fruit trees and, like you said, trying to better quality of life. And to me, it's also about thinking generationally, like whatever time frame we have left on this planet, right, or until things become, you know, very inhospitable, we only make things more difficult for those of future generations, our children, grandchildren, and beyond, with our inaction. And our actions, the things we choose to do now, whether that's planting fruit trees or, you know, unplugging and reducing waste and these sort of things, are the kinds of actions that are going to improve that quality of life down the line. So I appreciate that, whether you intend to or not. I think that's, for me, the right kind of example, as opposed to just saying, we need to wait for this person to become president, and they're going to initiate this deal of whatever it's going to solve our problems. Because not only do I think it takes away the necessary element of personal responsibility of, well, I can just vote and that'll fix it, like, and so people do remove themselves from any sort of responsibility from that. So I don't know, I just appreciate that, and I think that is more, hopefully, that people will see that there is a need for that decentralized, people-powered, true environmental movement that isn't going to be driven by big corporations or government-based solutions. Because, I mean, the U.S. government is the biggest polluter in the world, and more people are realizing that, the military and the results of military wars. I see a big opportunity for intersection between the sort of anti-war movement or the peace movement and the environmental movement, as people recognize that, you know. And so there's small actions we can take that on a communal level, but also I think we need to be skeptical of those types of authorities trying to lead the way. And any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we're completely on the same page there. I think most of the current environmental movement is basically garbage, to be honest. It's mostly run by corporations. It's a lot of greenwashing. It's a lot of government-led, where they don't actually want radical solutions. And unfortunately, a lot of it that is led even by the grassroots is highly misinformed. Sure. You know, you watch a documentary and you change your whole life based on that documentary overnight, but that documentary wasn't accurate. Yeah. And that's where we see, like, when I go to Instagram and I occasionally look at the environment hashtag, and I'm like, dude, this is so full of inaccuracies. You know, signs that say, I want a hot boyfriend, not a hot climate, and things like that. Yeah. And I appreciate everybody wanting to be involved, but the problem is that if we're acting from a place of misinformation, we can do a couple things. We can actually make things worse, but we can make things worse by thinking we're making things better. And I think that's actually, I would say that a large portion of the environmental movement today has fallen into a place of complacency by thinking they're doing better. And just an easy way that I can describe that is, like, let's say you punched someone you loved 10 times every day, and then tomorrow you just punched them 9 times instead. You are not friendly to them. You are slightly less destructive. And that's what we're doing today. A lot of people, like, they drive their electric car or they eat, you know, a vegan diet, and then all of a sudden they can fall into this place of, oh, I'm doing good, I'm an environmentalist. But the reality is that for the most part, they're still destroying the world, but now they can feel good. So I do think it's all about zooming way back when we talk about environmental issues, and I do think going back to the basics is extremely important, and then I think that's primarily community, not waiting on governments, not waiting on corporations, and being able to take things into your own hands that don't cost much money and that communities can implement now to start improving quality of life for the people in the community now.
Absolutely. That's really beautiful. Yeah, and I agree with you on that too, as far as sometimes some of the most dangerous individuals are those who are misinformed and feel highly charged about that misinformation, or just just thinking, like you said, that they have good intentions, and that's something to be thankful for, that there are people out there who feel called to something. But if it's just the latest hashtag of the week, it's very easy to just fall into that, like this, it's a trend basically is what it comes down to, and it's not that typically following trends doesn't typically lead to radical lifestyle changes that are going to be long lasting. It's more of like, this week you're an activist, or things like. And again, like, I think that we're all in different places, so it's not really an attack on judging somebody, but I think hopefully a recognition for some folks hearing this, especially those who look up to and appreciate your work, that maybe just joining the big environmental movement isn't the key, or isn't the answer, at least not the end of the answer. It's just a part of the solution, right? Anything else you want to leave everybody with?
Probably, if you're not different, you're not part of the solution, I would say. In the times that we live in today, if you look around you and you're comfortable and you feel normal and you feel like everything's running smooth and you're not going against the grain, then you probably need to rethink things a little bit and go a little deeper. And I do think that today we need radical solutions, and that means radical people, and that means going against the grain of society. And it's challenging, it's hard, but it's also challenging and hard to wake up and not feel like you're living out your values. And for me personally, the challenge of going against the grain is much better than the challenge of being depressed and not feeling effective. So be radical, I guess.
Be radical and live with your values. Otherwise, it can be a personal hell, I'd say. So, all right, everybody, find Rob at robgreenfield.org, right? Yep. He's going to be going on a world tour. You can find him everywhere for the next. And then when you come back next year, you're going to do the U.S. Is that
3 months? 3 months in the U.S. and Canada, almost all via train. And so hopefully we'll get to see a bunch of you out and about in the real world then.
Awesome, guys. Well, thank you for listening. Remember to subscribe to Rob's channels and all that good stuff. More importantly, check out his work, read it, integrate it. Don't just follow and like and send him some hearts, give him a little dopamine boost, but actually, use the ideas. And until next time, remember, you are beautiful, you are powerful, and you are free. Peace.